Rome, Italy, October 24, 1990, 10:47 a.m. The chamber falls silent. A single name echoes off stone walls that have heard centuries of power and betrayal. Gladio. That is all the Prime Minister says. One word whispered into an audience of senators whose faces are etched with confusion, shock, and a kind of dawning horror. A secret army, hidden beneath the very streets of Europe. Built not for peace. Built for war that never came. The truth crashes into Italy's political heart like an explosion in the night. A sudden shock that ripples outward, across borders and governments, through every capital from Brussels to Washington. In that instant, something enormous dies in plain sight, the illusion that the Cold War was fought only in the open. A long, cold table. A man in a lab coat brushes dust off an old journal. This is the story of why the secret army was built in the first place. World War II ended, but the world did not calm. The continent was scarred, vulnerable, and afraid. The Soviet Union towered over Europe like a storm looming on the horizon. Western leaders whispered of invasion, occupation, and annihilation. They feared their governments could fall, their people controlled, their nations swallowed. It was enough fear to build armies in shadows. NATO, the CIA, Britain's MI6. They forged something unseen. Something unacknowledged. Something meant to exist only if the Warsaw Pact swept westward and conquered all before it. They called it a stay-behind network, covert operatives, hidden weapons, clandestine plans. Soldiers that would never stand in formation, but would survive behind enemy lines to sabotage, to resist, to strike at the heart of an occupier. And in Italy, that secret was called Gladio, the sword. The Prime Minister holds a sheaf of yellowing files. Eyes flick to photos, maps, lists of weapons caches buried in forests and mountains. Faces of ordinary citizens, smiling in daylight, now tied to secret codenames, radio frequencies, arsenals hidden beneath the earth. No one knew. Not Parliament. Not the people. Not the press. Yet here it was, undeniable. Rome, 1990, Senate floor, real time. Senator Lombardi rises. His voice is thin, but firm. What was Gladio? Who authorized this? Who knew? Silence answers him first. Then a tremor of accusation creeps into the room. Every question is heavier than the last. The cameras have long since been turned away. The microphones cut. Only this chamber, this moment, remains. And the truth is not yet fully told. The Prime Minister's eyes flick to a photograph, a hillside in Italy. Trees stand tall, silent. Beneath them, metal crates filled with weapons, long forgotten until now. The room swallows his next words. But this was not just here, he says slowly, measured, like each word is a blow. This was across Europe. Flashback, Europe, early 1950s. Germany is rebuilding. Belgium's streets are crowded with refugees and soldiers. Norway trains resistance cells beneath midnight sun. Every capital fears the eastern wind. The West believes they must prepare not just for battle, but for subjugation. A network of resistance, larger than any one nation, begins to take shape. They bury arms caches under forests. They teach guerrilla warfare in secret camps. They recruit from veterans, clergy, laborious, farmhands, ordinary men and women who will never see the war they are preparing for. This is the hidden side of NATO's Cold War strategy, covert armies beneath sovereign states, secret plans beneath democratic governments. They called it stay behind. But what stayed behind was a question that would haunt Europe for decades. Back to 1990, Senate chamber. A map is unfurled. Red dots. Circles. Lines stretching from Italy to Belgium, to France, to Germany, and beyond. Each marker is a cache. A safe house. A unit. A network no citizen ever knew existed. Journalists crowded outside the building. Cameras rolled. They had expected a speech about economic reform or foreign aid. No one expected this. A secret army. And no one was prepared for the questions that followed. Night falls on Rome. Outside the Senate, reporters shout into cameras, handheld lights stabbing into the dark. Inside, a lone aide burns old documents. Not all secrets are revealed by officials. Some are erased in the night. Flames lick yellow pages. Ink curls and blackens. Names disappear, histories revised, truths buried. A whisper lingers in the corridor. What will be revealed next? Why it mattered. Europe was fragile in the early Cold War. Borders were lines scribbled in sand by invasion plans, reprisals, and fear. The idea of a Soviet push into Western Europe wasn't abstract. It was real. Intelligence services believed that if Warsaw Pact forces were to cross the Elbe and Rhine, entire nations could fold in weeks, if not days. So NATO and its partners built Gladio and its sister networks not as an army in the conventional sense, but as a post-occupation resistance meant to hold territory, gather intelligence, sabotage supply lines, and, if need be, coordinate a fractured defense behind enemy lines. But when the war that never came, the secret networks did not dissolve. They stayed in shadow, unaccountable, unknown, until 1990. The camera holds on the Prime Minister's face. Tired. Worn. He leans forward. His voice is low. What happens now changes everything. Rome, Italy, night, October 24, 1990. The city is quiet now, but the air hums with tension. Inside the Prime Minister's office, the files lie open across the table, a chaotic grid of paper and ink, names and dates and locations that seem impossible. Each page is a thread, and the room feels like the center of a spider's web. One wrong move, one revelation, and the whole network could collapse. He picks up a photograph, a young man in uniform, smiling in sunlight, unaware that in a few years he will be buried under the weight of secrets he never signed for. Italy, 1969. A bomb explodes in a piazza, shattering glass, ripping through stone. Panic floods the streets. Citizens scream, running in every direction. Smoke curls in the sky like black fingers clawing at the clouds. But the authorities never speak the word Gladio. No one ever admits what these clandestine forces might be capable of, or whether they are responsible. The line between protection and provocation is blurred beyond recognition. This was the pattern. Small terror acts, manipulated political unrest, whispers of left-wing extremism. No one would ever know who pulled the strings. The network stayed hidden, operating in the shadows, always ready to strike, always prepared for a war that never came, yet shaping the present in ways no one could see. Rome, 1990, Senate floor. Senator Lombardi leans forward, voice rising. Who authorized this? How many countries? How many deaths? The Prime Minister lays down a folder marked Confidential, NATO Operations. Maps, reports, radio codes. Each symbol, each number, a whisper of something vast and unseen. Gladio was across Europe, he says. Italy, Belgium, Germany, France, Denmark, Norway, networks built to resist invasion. But when the threat never arrived, they remained. Hidden. Untouched. Unchecked. The senators shift uneasily. The horror of it settles like a cold stone in their stomachs. NATO strategy in the 1950s and 60s. Europe trembled after World War II. Governments were fragile. Intelligence agencies feared communist uprisings, Soviet occupation, and political collapse. The concept of stay-behind units became a blueprint for a shadow army, men and women trained in sabotage, guerrilla tactics, and clandestine operations. Weapons caches were buried in forests, mountains, even under private farms. Radio transmitters, maps, escape routes, hidden safe houses, all prepared for a war that was never officially declared. The problem was that these networks were never dismantled. Once the threat faded, the machinery of secrecy continued. Units remained autonomous, in some cases reporting only to foreign intelligence, invisible to the governments they existed to protect. The shadow had grown larger than its masters. Milan, 1972. A quiet night turns deadly. A train station packed with commuters. Explosions rip through the air. Panic. Confusion. Death. Official reports blame extremists, but whispers suggest otherwise. Could Gladio operatives have been involved? Some argue that elements within stay-behind networks may have participated in false flag operations designed to sway public opinion toward right-wing parties, to destabilize governments leaning left. Fear and manipulation, the tools of a secret army. Citizens went to work, unaware they were pawns in a political chessboard played in shadows. Survivors carried the trauma, the questions, the impossible knowledge that someone somewhere, might be orchestrating events they could never see. Rome, 1990. The Prime Minister's hands are steady, but his eyes are heavy. These were not rogue actors, he says. They were sanctioned, funded, directed, and hidden from the people. A senator's voice trembles. And the CIA? NATO? Did they know? Yes, he replies. They built it. They managed it. They kept it alive. The weight of revelation hangs in the air. This is not a history lesson. This is the uncovering of decades of secrets that reshaped nations without consent. The psychology of secrecy. Those recruited into Gladio were ordinary citizens, drafted into extraordinary circumstances. Farmers, clerks, ex-soldiers, shopkeepers, trained to survive behind enemy lines, to resist, to sabotage. Their mission required absolute secrecy, loyalty without oversight, and a readiness to act in wars that may never come. Years passed. Societies democratized. Governments changed. And the men and women of Gladio were still out there, hidden caches still intact, radios still operational. They became shadows of themselves. Guardians without battles. Warriors without wars. Their very existence a paradox, prepared for a conflict that never arrived, yet shaping events nonetheless. Rome, October 25, 1990. The press gathers. Questions fly. Cameras flash. Microphones hover like predators. The Prime Minister's voice is calm, authoritative. Operation Gladio existed to protect Europe from Soviet invasion, he says. But it became something more. Something secret, something unaccountable. And now, the truth is coming to light. The journalists erupt with questions, but he walks away, leaving echoes of fear and curiosity in his wake. Europe, 1980s. Cold War tensions linger. A generation grows up believing in peace, unaware of the hidden armies beneath their cities, forests, and mountains. Intelligence officers check off boxes on reports, diplomats negotiate treaties, while stay-behind networks remain active, silent, invisible. Occasionally, weapons caches are discovered. Occasionally, questions arise. But official responses are vague. Denials. The machinery of secrecy continues unbroken. The paradox is simple. The networks were designed to prevent totalitarian occupation, yet their secrecy sometimes undermined the very democracy they were built to defend. Rome Senate. The Prime Minister closes the last folder. Europe must now decide, he says. Will we dismantle what was built in fear, or will we continue to live with shadows beneath our streets? The chamber is silent. No one speaks. Outside, the streets of Rome are calm, oblivious. But beneath the surface, the story continues. Weapons caches remain. Radios still work. Operatives, now older, still remember their training. The past refuses to stay buried. Night falls over Europe. From Milan to Brussels, from Oslo to Paris, questions arise in secret offices, backrooms, and intelligence headquarters. How far did Gladio reach? Who was involved? How many lives were touched, changed, or lost? The answers are murky. Some will never be known. Others will surface slowly, through hearings, investigations, and the courage of those willing to speak. One thing is clear, the shadow of Operation Gladio has not disappeared. It has only changed form, waiting for the next moment when fear or ambition might bring it fully into the light. The story of Europe's secret army ends not with closure, but with questions. What would you have done if you had been part of it? What would you have known, and what would you have done with that knowledge? The shadows remain.